We have been working for many years in SAP projects implementations, and the last 10 years we have been working with AnyLogic. And what I want to share with you today is how we are integrating our simulation models with SAP. So this is the topics I would like to cover. I hope I have enough time because I have a demo I would like to show you at the end. So IT is, as I said, we started as an SAP partner implementing the typical SAP projects, and at some point we started developing simulation models to combine with the planning process that we were implementing in SAP, because we saw a need of having scenario testing, what if, or risk scenarios. So we saw that a simulation model was a perfect fit for what we were doing with SAP. Today we are working with a business technology platform that SAP has on the cloud, and we are integrating AnyLogic with this platform. And this platform has all the planning and analytic and forecasting functions that we need for our solutions, and we use it as a data platform for AnyLogic. Our main partners are, as I said, SAP, AnyLogic, and Gurobi. Gurobi is, you probably know them, they have a solver. And we also integrate the solver with AnyLogic, and that's basically how we build our solutions. So the core components of our solutions will include one or two or three of these components. So it's either one of the planning processes that companies have. It could be sales and operation planning, demand planning, forecasting, production planning, any type of planning that a company is doing. The data hub is something critical from our point of view because simulation model and planning are related to data. So having the right data in the right place, like a single point of truth, is critical. And giving the user the ability to maintain the data is also critical. So this is what we do with the SAP components. We get all the data from the different source systems. Many times the planning data is not in the system, it's in Excel, so we have to get all that into one single place, and from there we can load it to AnyLogic, and the result from the simulation will come back to SAP. We have simulation models for different industries and processes, and of course we have all the analytics that we need on the SAP platform. So looking at some of the industries that we have been working for with AnyLogic, we have specific solutions or simulations for especially the consumer packaged good market, so any type of production, pet food production, beauty industry, fishery. We also have some warehouse simulation models, transportation and river, train, and some finance models. Those are all very easily tailored for a new customer. It already has all the industry rules and business rules in the model. Now, how we integrate AnyLogic with SAP. This is really, it's not a database integration. It's an application to application integration. So from AnyLogic, we will start logging into this SAP platform, and the first thing we're going to get from SAP is a token. So a token is something that we need as a security to be able to then talk to SAP and get data in and out from SAP. So once we have a token, the next step will be from Java, we generate a HTTPS request, and we can get any information back from SAP, from any of the data structures that we built on this platform. So this is very flexible because the user has the power to change the structure in the cloud platform. So they can add new columns to the master data. They could add new grouping or hierarchies. And the first thing we will do from AnyLogic is to bring in what we call the metadata. So we will query all the structure, and then the model is going to readapt. It's dynamic, so it's going to create all the objects based on this information. Once we process the data or the simulation, we have a scenario that's in the local database in AnyLogic, and we will send another message to SAP to load it back into the structures. So this is how we are dealing with this integration. The nice thing about connecting to this platform that's called SAP Analytics Cloud is that from there we can have a connection to all SAP line of business solutions. So if we need to integrate with S/4HANA, if we need to integrate with IBP or any of the SAP solutions, we can do that once we are on this platform. So those are all native integrations that SAP provides. And also we can connect to many other systems or databases. Many of our customers are not SAP customers. We use the SAP platform because of the functionality that we get, but the user can have any ERP system. It could be Oracle, it could be JD Edwards, it could be Sage, it could be anything. And from this platform, we can load that data into this data structure. So just to explain this a little bit more, we chose one of our business cases. This is a real case that we implemented. So it's a sales and operation planning solution that we built on this SAP platform. And of course, we had the data hub, we had all the planning functions, and we had a simulation that was going to run production scenarios for the supply review. As you probably know, this is the typical cycle of a sales and operation planning process. You start creating your forecast demand. Next step, you can have a meeting with your demand planning team. So you're going to review the different planning scenarios that you have. Then you have to work on your supply planning optimization. See, based on the demand, how you're going to fulfill that demand. And then you go into a supply planning review where you choose one of those scenarios, planning scenarios, and then you have the executive meeting where you approve and move forward with that plan. What we are adding here is a simulation cycle that is meant to help the supply team run different scenarios on the fly. So they can select any of the demand planning that is already created in SAP. They will load all the parameters they need for the scenario. Once this will run in a few minutes, and then the result will be loaded back into SAP. So when they go to the supply planning review, they can show the numbers. They can show what's the projection for the next 12 or 18 rolling months with all the rough cut capacity that they were running with the simulation model. And so the discussions are better than when they do this manually. They only had 2 to 4 weeks of visibility of their supply planning. So they went from that to 12 months in just a few, I think it was in 8 weeks. So specifically for supply planning, for sales and operation planning, what we are going to get from SAP is first the metadata and the master data. That's critical for the model because the model is going to build up based on that information. Then we are going to pick the forecast demand that is already created. We are going to read the bill of materials that we need to know how to produce the finished goods, and we are going to load the inventory position. So this is the information that we need to be able to run the simulation model. This will go into the AnyLogic database, and the user then has some local parameters that they can change to create more scenarios. So what comes from SAP is like the default values, but they can change them on the fly. And immediately after, we will generate a script to run the solver. And that script is also adapting based on the master data or the metadata that we loaded. So if we have a new line, if we have a new process, AnyLogic will automatically recreate that script for Gurobi or any of the other solvers that we use. So we will execute the solver from AnyLogic, and we will get the result back. Then we will run the simulation, and the output will go back into SAP as a production plan, as a raw material requirement plan, and the inventory projection, because it's also optimizing the inventory based on your inventory policy. If you want to use weeks of supply or minimum or maximum safety stock, the model is going to take that into account. And it's also going to give you some information on labor. Labor is a big constraint, or it has been for a time. So some of the parameters is defining if you can work in 1 shift, 2 shifts, 3 shifts, depending on the plants, depending on the month. So you're going to get some information on what is the minimum labor that you need, and how are you using your equipment, how many hours you have been running. I'm going to try to move faster in these slides because I want to get to the demo. But as I said, you first load into the cloud system, where you will start the process. Here where you have your data structure, and as I said, this what we call dimensions and attributes. These are not tables. This is something that is easy to understand for our end users. So they will see all their structure here, and they can add new attributes or hierarchies, and they can add new master data. So if they're planning a new product in 6 months, they can come in here and add that in this data structure. They don't need to go back to the ERP to create master data. And they will also maintain the business metadata. So that is, how many plants do you have, how many lines, how many processes I have in each line, and all the rates and all the information we need to run the model with those lines. The next step would be to create the forecast. So this platform has forecasting scenarios where the user can generate a baseline based on their historical data. They can load lifts, and everything related to the commercial activity that they're planning. They can use influencers, external influencers. In this case, this company was starting to use the inflation rate, historical and future projection, to see if there was some type of correlation between their sales and inflation. So you can start using that type of influencers in the forecasting tool. Then you have all the analytics that you need. What's nice about this platform is that we provide the basic analytic options, but the user can create their own reports on the system. Once you get to you're done with all the input you need for the simulation, you will be running the simulation. The first step, you're going to select a forecast. So you maybe have multiple versions or forecast versions. So we're going to pick one. We're going to define how many months do we want to run. We are going to pick the inventory position that we want for this scenario. And then we go into the parameters slide or view. Here's where you have all what we call the fast-moving parameters, the ones you want to change with every new scenario. Basically, we have rates, we have OEE changes, we have shifts. Those are the parameters that they use more to create different scenarios, and they can do that by month, by line, by plant. In this case, we had two different type of production. We have DTC, that's direct to consumer, so that is a make-to-order type of production. We had the retail type of production where we do have inventory, so we had to optimize the inventory. There's a slight difference between how you simulate those two scenarios. So the parameters are independent for DTC and retail. And being able to define the shifts by plant, by line, by month, that's what's critical because, as you know, it was some times that it was difficult for a company to be able to run 3 shifts in some locations. Then there are some, here's where we will be running the solver, and then we start running the simulation. This is not meant to be like a 3D where you see your plant and the floor of your plant and all the nice, views of the different equipments. We are using this as a tool to run the scenarios and optimize. So because it's building every time we run the model, it's difficult to have a nicer 3D view. So here, based on your input, we have 2 plants. One is producing the direct-to-consumer, one is the retail. And once you start running the model, you'll see some output from the production compared to the demand. You see the behavior of DTC is very different from retail because there's no inventory. You either are able to fulfill the order or you're not, but you don't have inventory. In retail, you do handle inventory, so you have very different production and demand every month, depending on your safety stock and how your inventory is running. You can look at more detailed level, like SKU level or finished good. You can see here the lines below are the inventory, how the inventory is running. The green line in this case is showing your real inventory, so you're high in inventory, and your safety stock is lower. So the first weeks, the proposal is not, you don't need to produce because you have to consume that inventory. You start producing once your inventory gets to your safety stock level. So once you reach the red line, then you start producing based on your demand and the safety stock you need for moving forward. You can have the opposite situation. Maybe it's a new product and you have to build up inventory. So you have a large production in the first week because you have to make it to your safety stock. So you can see this type of details by SKU. Once the simulation is finished, there's an export to SAP button, and you can even name the scenario with whatever name you want to be able to see it in SAP and compare it to other scenarios. So once this data is back into SAP, you have different reports that you can use and see all the details by week. So the demand is in monthly buckets. The production after going through AnyLogic, it's really in days, but usually they will come to see this in weeks. And so here you have your plan, you have your inventory projection. You can see how your inventory cost is going to be through the next 12 months. And on the right, there's a plant utilization chart, so you can see how many hours you have been running in each plant. So very detailed information that you can get from AnyLogic. As a result for this company, they had for the first time one what we call this single point of truth for all the data. We had to collect data from 2 different systems and from a lot of manual files into the data hub, and we gave the user the governance of the master data. So this was a very big, it was key for the success of the project. On the demand side, they started running 18 rolling months. Immediately after a few months, they noticed that their MAPE and bias was improving based on now using this forecasting tool. And on the supply planning side, where they had more benefits, they went from just a few weeks of visibility to 18 months production plan. And they had a huge reduction in inventory. They had inventory on raw materials and finished goods. I think it was like $4 million that they were projecting to save in the next 6 to 8 months just by optimizing the inventory levels. On the other side, what's different now with this platform is that we can offer this as a service. So it's not like the traditional implementation where you go in, you spend 6 months or a year implementing the solution, and then you go to the next project. This is implemented as a service. So usually the time to value for this type of implementation is just a few weeks. As I said, we were able to get them up and running with a full sales and operation planning in 8 weeks. And your cost is going to be flat after you went through the we don't call it implementation. It's just adapting the system to their needs. So it's more like an onboarding process. And after that, your cost is going to be flat because it's only a subscription and it's based on the amount of users. So this makes this very affordable for smaller companies. And that's why we were able to go to companies that could never use or they don't have this infrastructure or the budget to run an SAP solution. But this, when you have it as a service, then it's affordable for smaller companies. I think here's our demo. So as I was mentioning before, here's where you log into SAP. You have some charts that you can see in your home screen. The first thing you're going to do is go to your metadata screen. Here you see there you have your plans. Each plan have different lines. There are different line types. Depending on what type of product you can run on that line, you have processes, the different processes that are part of that line. Like there could be 1, 2, or 3 or more. And then you have different type. Can we stop this here a minute? We divided the processes in different type of processes, and we call them manual, automatic, or hybrid. We're going to see that later in AnyLogic. So that will tell AnyLogic what type of resources that we are going to need for that process. So, and then all the numbers are the different rates and maximums that we need for that process. Can we go on? So here we're going to add a new line for the plant number 2. It's in the bottom of the screen. So we added a treatment line, additional treatment line. We added all the required data for it. So now when we run the simulation model, we should see a new line on the simulation. So the next step, as I said, is creating your demand plan. Here, let's go just through some of the steps where you can run a predictive scenario. It's just a click on a button after you've created the scenario, and the system will come back with a baseline for the next 12 to 18 months. And you can immediately compare with your budget, with past years, with previous forecasts. So you have everything you need to to generate your demand plan. Here's where you load the influencers. In this case, this is the past inflation in the US for the last 5 years and the projected inflation for the next 2 years, and how this could impact in your demand. Here's where you load your lifts. I mean, this is what you do with your commercial team. So based on after the baseline, you have some lifts or sometimes some downs. And you can also change your actuals if you have outliers. What's critical here is that you keep track of all these changes. So you don't want to change your real actual numbers. If you fix an outlier, you want the system to have that information, so you know what you did with your actuals. Then there's all these analytic options that you have to see and analyze, compare the demand plan that you just created. These are some typical MAPE or bias type of reports or bridge reports, or just comparing different demand plans, what you said last month and what you said you're doing this month. These are all dynamic. You have all type of filters, and the user can change this anytime. And I think the next one is the comparison between different versions, forecast, actuals, budget, compared to your budget to last year, percentage. And so these are typical analytic options that we provide. So now, like I said, we are going to run the simulation model. So we're going to pick one of the demand that we generated. We want to change some of how many months we want to run it. This is going to be run for 12 months. And you can see on the right that we are connected to SAP, and we are getting the information back from the different data structures. So those are all different queries that we are sending to SAP, and we're getting back the data into AnyLogic. Once you process this, is where AnyLogic is going to build all the objects that it needs. And there are some detailed parameters these are the slow-moving parameters, where you have defined all your lines and the processes, and you have all the different parameters that you need for AnyLogic to run. And you can change them here if you want to create a different scenario, or you can change them in SAP. So I don't know if you saw, but we had the new line already in there. Then you set the parameters for shifts and for some of the rates. And we're going to name this AnyLogic, so then we can find it and see it in the output in SAP. So we're going to name the scenario as AnyLogic. So then we start running the model. And if you click on a plant, you'll go in and see the different lines. So what you see below are the different lines, and those were defined in that table that we see at the beginning. And if you open a line, you see the processes. And you saw that we had another column with the processes. And here's where you have the different process type. Can you stop it here a minute? No. Well, let's move forward and let's stop there. Okay. So you see we have 3 different flows for the manual process. So manual process is depending on a resource of just people and delays. The hybrid process is a combination of people and machines. So it's a different flow. And the last one is the automatic. So there's no people here. There's only machines and rates. So it's very easy to change or adjust the model to have the different type of processes. So can we go on? So if you click on the line or the process, sorry, you'll see that it's running in a different flow. So this is how we are adapting to the changes. So DTC has more process flows than retail because it's a more complicated process. And Retail has just one. It's filling a bottle and then packaging the bottle. So it's just automatic process. And there are some charts that you can see in AnyLogic where you see how you're using your machines, every process and every line, how much time you have been using it by week. And there's also some tables, but the AnyLogic is not meant for the users to come in and check. This is used usually for validation. Once you know the model is running correctly, they just run the model and get the outputs back into SAP. But we need to have this to be able to validate the process. So here you're back looking at some finished good level production plan, what's going on with the inventory, and your production plan is on the top. On the different possible scenarios where you have to build up inventory or you have to consume inventory. So let's just let it run. So once we are done here, we're going to export this, and you're going to go back to SAP. We go into the supply planning options, and here we have also some standard reports that we provide, and they can build more. This first report is going to show them their production plan. They're comparing the demand, the orders, against the production. There was no problem in DDC. They were able to fulfill the entire plan, so you see all the columns are the same. There's no back orders or once you go into the retail production, here's where you see the inventory level through the 18 months or 12 months. And you can, this is very dynamic, so you can click on a product and then you see the chart based on that specific product. And you'll see in a moment that we are going to select our AnyLogic there. So those are all the different scenarios that we were running. And you see that on the bottom, you have the AnyLogic scenario. So this is what came back from what we ran a minute ago. So you can keep track of all the different scenarios and that you run in the model and compare them in SAP. And for here we are looking at a scenario where we're running just one shift, and it went very fast, but you were not able to fulfill your safety stock, but you didn't have any stock out. So can you stop that here, please? Yep. Can you go back, or it's? Yeah. So here you see that your inventory level is below the safety stock. And because you are running a very restrictive scenario where you have only one shift and your capacity was very low, then the system is proposing to break the safety stock level, but to avoid the stock outs. So, and you can decide if you want to do that or not, but it's going to propose the best possible solution. So if the solution means that you have to break your safety stock, it's going to propose that. And if you then have a better scenario with 2 or 3 shifts, this is going to look very different. Can we go on? And usually the inventory is going to go aligned with your safety stock level. The same way you can see your raw material projection, what you're going to need when, how's your inventory flowing in your raw materials, and your packaging materials, and your order materials. So everything you need to get the product out the door is being calculated in the simulation model. It's also taking into account batch sizes and lead times to show this projection. And this is obviously very useful for the supply chain discussions. Next, there are some other reports that you can look at. This is the plant utilization. So if you're running one shift, you see that it's all flat in 40 hours per week because you're not running on the weekends either. So you can see what's going on in each plant on the machine utilization. It's nice because we have all that information in AnyLogic. When we are running the simulation, we get all the detailed information that we need. This is the labor utilization, so how many people you need for each and every process. This is based on the resources that we were using and those flows that we saw. So you can know exactly how many people you need, how many resources you need for each process. And I think there's an inventory, cost inventory report and something else that we added to the demo. So when you look at the inventory projection, you also want to see your valuation. So the optimization is also going to look at the cost of the inventory. So if you have to do some pre-production, you'll probably choose to do the inventory on products that are the cost is lower, so that you can have. We had some savings on the inventory just by looking at the cost of the inventory. And I think the last one is where you compare scenarios, so you can get two scenarios in the same screen and see how the inventory flows and the production compare just two scenarios. So this is very useful. You see that based on how you're restricting your production, you need to build more inventory in front to be able to fulfill, or you can have a lower inventory level. So this is basically what we have, what we wanted to show you. I don't know if you have any questions.
Hi, thank you so much for your presentation. So I was thinking, this is like a long-term planning, like 18-month,
Yeah.
you said, right?
Yes.
Do you have any way to feed that information into a daily planning or something? Because I guess this is like a long-term and it's optimized.
Yeah.
How can they make sure that the daily planning or the more short-term planning is aligned to that long-term planning?
Okay. So how do you align this with detailed scheduling, basically? As I mentioned before, the model is really running on a daily basis. So the information that we generate with AnyLogic is daily. What we are not taking into account in this model is if you have changeovers and those type of delays are not considered here. So it's not a real detailed scheduling. We do have a model that will run the next 4 or 6 weeks, and that's a real detailed scheduling model. This is meant to be a rough capacity, but you do have the information on a daily basis. You can see how this is matching to your detailed scheduling.
Hi. I'm interested in your integration between AnyLogic and Gurobi. What was Gurobi solving for in your model?
So what is Gurobi solving? Well, we are running Gurobi, or we use other solvers as well. We even have we can use a open source solver. So it doesn't matter what solver you use. We generate a script that will run in multiple solvers, but what we are trying to find is optimize the retail process, because retail has the inventory and we need to find a solution for the restrictions that you added. So once we have that back from Groby, then we run the simulation with that proposal. And the simulation will still do some optimization, but based on the solution that the solver found first. Thank you.